I always knew that I was a backup for my parents. Since childhood, my twin sister was considered special, beautiful, smart, talented. She was someone my parents could brag about to their family and friends. And me? I was just another daughter, background noise that no one noticed. We were born on the same day, but in different realities. She was bought the best clothes, paid for dance and music lessons, and taken to photo shoots. I got the leftovers, old clothes, silent ignorance and constant comparisons. "Look at your sister, why can't you be like her?" was a phrase I heard since childhood. I tried to ignore it. I did my homework on my own, worked part-time jobs since high school to buy things I liked. My parents used to say that this builds character, although for some reason my sister didn't need to build character. Everything just came to her. Without effort. No struggle. Our 21st birthday was a moment I will never forget. We celebrated at home, and while the guests were enjoying the cake, my parents announced that they had prepared a special gift for my sister. I didn't even try to hope for anything more than a set of cosmetics or a new notebook. But what happened next was a blow below the belt. There was a luxurious black car in the yard. It was new. Shiny. Perfect. My sister rushed to it, screaming with delight, and I stood aside, trying not to give away my emotions. At that moment, my mom came up to me and held out the envelope with a smile. I opened it and saw a gift card for $15. $15. "You need to learn to appreciate money," she told me, as if explaining something obvious. I felt everything inside me shrink. I couldn't even answer her. I just looked down and went to my room in silence. That night I sat on my bed, holding that tiny card in my hands, and tried to understand why I was in so much pain. It wasn't the first time it happened. This is not unusual. But for some reason, this time something in me broke. I realized that I no longer wanted to live in the shadows. I don't want to prove my worth to them. I don't want to ask for a little attention from those who have never seen me. The next morning I packed my things and left. Without explanation. No tears. I just left their lives, leaving them their perfect world where I was an unnecessary figure. I went to another city, found a job as a waitress and started building my life from scratch. I worked 12 hours a day, studied in the evening, and rented a tiny room in an old house. It was hard, but I felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn someone's love. I was just living. But I had no idea that in a few years, fate would give me a chance to return. And not to ask for love, but to show who among us really knows the value of life. Life away from my family was hard, but I learned to survive. Every dollar I earned mattered. I worked several jobs at the same time, as a waitress during the day, cleaning offices at night, and writing freelance articles on weekends. I didn't allow myself the luxury of resting or having fun. I wanted to prove to myself that I could achieve everything without their support. Years passed, and I started to rise. At first it was a modest apartment, then I saved up for my first car, and then I got a job offer at a marketing company. When others spent money on travel and restaurants, I saved every cent. I had one goal: financial freedom. I didn't want to depend on anyone else. But at the same time, I continued to follow my sister's life. She posted photos of new trips, parties, and expensive purchases on social media. Her life looked carefree and easy, while mine consisted of sleepless nights and constant struggle. We did not communicate. My parents were not interested in me, and I did not try to remind them of my existence. But one evening I received an unexpected call from a distant aunt. Her voice was tense, almost apologetic. She said that my parents were in serious financial trouble. Their house was about to be repossessed by the bank because of mortgage debts. I listened with a cold heart. They didn't turn to me. They didn't even think I could help. They turned to my sister, but she refused. She had other priorities. It was like a blow. I finished the conversation, sat on the floor and just stared at the wall in silence. Part of me was screaming, this is their choice. They bet on her. Let her save them now. But the other part, the part they had never seen, could not let them stay on the street. I stayed up all night thinking about what to do. In the morning I checked my savings. Over the years of hard work, I had saved enough to cover their mortgage. It was almost the entire amount I planned to invest in my own business. But I made a choice. I contacted the bank and secretly paid off all the debts. They never knew who saved their house. I didn't do it for gratitude. Not for forgiveness. I did it to prove to myself that I was stronger than the pain they had caused me. I continued to live my life as if nothing had happened. And they never realized how close they were to the abyss. But fate had its own plans. And everything was revealed when I least expected it. The year passed quietly. I lived my life, focusing on my work and the dreams I was building from scratch. I thought I had closed this chapter. But fate always finds a way to remind you of the past. It all started at a family meeting. No one invited me there, my sister took care of it. She has always positioned herself as the successful and favorite daughter, and I was the shadowy character that people whisper about. But this time I decided to go. Not for them. For myself. I wanted to see everything with my own eyes, to look them in the eye and understand whether I had any emotions left for these people. I walked into the house where I spent my childhood, but which had long since ceased to be my home. Everyone was there, my parents, my sister, my relatives, even distant acquaintances whom I had not seen for years. My sister, as always, shone in the spotlight, bragging about her new car and her vacation in Bali. And I just stood in the corner, unnoticed, as usual. Until they started talking about the house. My mother proudly told me how they had, miraculously, avoided bankruptcy and saved the house. She looked at my sister with gratitude, as if it was her merit. But it was then that my aunt, who knew the truth, did not hold back. She said it was me. I closed their debts. I was the one they had always considered ungrateful and not good enough. The room froze. At first, silence. Then the looks. My father looked at me, not understanding. My mother turned pale. My sister flashed with anger because her perfect image was falling apart before her eyes. And I just stood there. Without emotion. No regret. No desire to explain myself. Their faces were my personal moment of justice. Not revenge. No. It was a cold and hard fact that they could not ignore. My father tried to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. My mother looked down, and my sister, unable to stand it, just left the room. I did not stay for dinner. I had no desire to listen to excuses or fake apologies. I left that house with my head held high, leaving them only the emptiness of their conscience. And you know what's most interesting? I didn't feel any relief. Only emptiness. Because justice is not always satisfying. It simply reveals the truth, which hurts more than a lie. But I went home with the feeling that I would never return to those who had never seen me as anything but a shadow against the background of their beloved daughter. After that meeting, I thought I would feel relieved. But instead, I felt a strange emptiness. I was sitting in my apartment, looking out the window at the night city, which seemed to be living its own life, not noticing my inner turmoil. Scenes from that family meeting were playing in my head, my mother's face, my father's confusion, my sister's anger. All this haunted me, as if I were responsible for their disappointment. Although, was it my fault that they chose someone else over me? Did I have to spend my whole life proving my worth to them while my sister was getting everything on a silver platter just for the mere fact of her existence? At that moment, I realized that the problem had never been with me. The next morning I received a call from my father. It was his first call in several years. His voice was trembling. He did not apologize, did not make excuses. He was just silent on the other end of the phone, as if he was waiting for me to melt the ice between us. But I didn't want to save him anymore. I calmly said that I had made my choice. I didn't help them to get their recognition or love. I did it for myself. Because I could not watch them lose the house I grew up in, even if it had long ceased to be home for me. He didn't know what to say. We were both silent. Finally, he just said, "Thank you." And he hung up the phone. That same evening, my sister texted me. Her text was full of anger and sarcasm. She accused me of having ruined her reputation in front of her family, and that now everyone can see that she hasn't really achieved anything. I wanted to respond to her. I wanted to tear her apart with words, as she had done to me all my life. But I didn't. Because at that moment I realized one thing: people who are used to living a lie hate those who show them the truth. This is not my battle. I blocked her number and deleted all her messages. I was no longer looking for their love. I didn't need their recognition. I knew I had done the right thing. But there was still one unknown inside me. Why did they never choose me? After I blocked my sister, there was a strange silence. No calls, no messages, no random mentions of me in the family chat room, which I had long since left. It was as if I had never existed. This silence, which had once scared me to the point of panic, was now my salvation. I was no longer trying to justify myself to them. I didn't try to earn the love they gave my sister so easily. And do you know what the most interesting thing is? As soon as I stopped fighting for their acceptance, I finally started living. I worked as I had before, paying their mortgage. Not for them. For myself. I knew none of them would appreciate it, but I didn't need their gratitude anymore. My work started to bring in more income. I rented an apartment in the city center, which I had always dreamed of having. I traveled on weekends, learned new languages, and met people who valued me for my strength, not for my role in someone else's family drama. But inside, there was still some invisible thread pulling me back. This feeling that I still owe them something. That I had to prove to them who I had become. It was like an invisible cage that I had been put in since childhood. One day, I came across an old photo on my phone, my sister and I at our 16th birthday party. She is wearing a new dress that my mother bought her, and I am wearing a cheap second-hand sweater. My mom said, "It doesn't matter to you, you're always so simple." That was the moment when I was first convinced that I was second-rate. I looked at that photo and felt a strange rage. Not at them. But at myself. At that girl who let them convince her that she was worthless. The next morning I called the bank and closed the mortgage on their house. Yes, I did it. In full. It was my last move in this game. I sent my mother a check with a receipt and a short note: "I have closed your debt. You no longer owe me anything. And neither do I." And that was it. No explanations, no emotions. No desire to hear, "thank you," in return. It was my last step to escape from this family. In the evening, I received a call from my aunt, who was the only one in the family who always tried to support me. She said that my mother had been crying all day, my father couldn't say anything, and my sister smashed the phone against the wall. It broke them. But not because I helped them. But because I was no longer someone they could humiliate. It was my victory. I no longer wanted their love. I had found something more important. Self-respect. After I closed their mortgage, something clicked inside me. It was as if I had finally broken out of this toxic cycle where I was constantly being compared, humiliated, and made to feel like I wasn't good enough. I was expecting a wave of regret or sadness to wash over me. Maybe I even expected to feel empty because I had broken the connection with my family. But you know what I felt? I felt light. As if a weight that I had been carrying all my life had been lifted from my shoulders. My mom never called me. Neither did my father. Nor my sister. And, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. They lost their main tool of influence on me, my sense of guilt. Life started changing at a crazy speed. My business grew rapidly. I started working with clients from abroad, received contracts that I could only dream of once. I bought a car that I used to want so badly but couldn't afford. Not to prove anything to anyone, but simply because I deserved it through my work. Then I went on a trip to Italy, where I had always dreamed of visiting. And for the first time in many years, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see the girl who was begging for love from those who were never going to give it. I saw a strong woman who had created her own life. However, the real ending of this story came at a big family reunion a few months later. I did not want to go there. But something inside me said, "You are no longer a victim. You have nothing to fear." I showed up in a stylish black suit, with perfect hair and a confidence they had never seen in me before. All the relatives already knew the truth. Everyone knew that I had been paying the mortgage all this time while my sister received luxurious gifts and lived a carefree life. But no one dared to approach me with questions. Not even my mom, who just gave me a short, angry look and turned away. I realized that I was no longer her daughter. I was her biggest disappointment. And it was ironic because I was the only one who really helped them when they needed it. After dinner, my aunt came up to me and said quietly, "They will never forgive you for becoming strong. They needed a weak version of you to make them feel better about themselves. And now you are a reminder of their own insignificance." These words cut into my soul. I realized that the problem was never me. I was always the one they were afraid of because I did not meet their expectations. I walked out of that house at night, breathed in the cold air, and smiled. It was my final exit from the darkness they had been dragging me into for years. And you know what the most interesting thing is? I didn't feel hate anymore. Not towards my mom, not towards my dad, not towards my sister. Only regret. I was sorry that they had lost the only person who was actually ready to support them, not for the sake of status or attention, but out of love. But now that love belonged to me. And I will never give it away to those who do not know how to appreciate it.